but I'll tell you how the gospel accounts came to be. What the people did was, for celebrating the Eucharist, they used to go into the synagogue and do what you and I would call basically the early part of the liturgy of the word. The synagogue has a penitential service, a reading of the scriptures and a homily, and they go up to that. Then they would go into a home after being in the synagogue, and when they went into the home, the next thing they would have is the celebration of the sacrament of the bread and wine. But they would begin it by, first of all, having someone tell a Jesus story. Now you have to understand, I am talking at a time in history where if a community of Catholics gathered like this, there's a percentage of them who actually knew Jesus. I mean, we're way, way back. And so they would tell us their Jesus story. Someone would tell a Jesus story. And because of the way it took place, the Jesus stories were actually triggered by what they heard in the synagogue. So like, for instance, we go to the synagogue and they tell us about the Jews in the desert and manna being spread. And then we would come inside and someone would say, you know, I remember once when we were out with Jesus and he was teaching us and we didn't have any food. And you know, he took some loaves, a couple fish from a kid, and he blessed it and he fed us. One of the things to know, we have only the stories about Jesus that were triggered by Jewish stories. Those are the only stories we have, because they would... Now, this went on this way in the early church, and we have no idea the date when it happened, but we know the city it happened in. It happened in Rome. In Rome, one Sunday, the Christian community gathered together. When they sat down, the last person who had actually known Jesus face to face had died the preceding week. They sat down that very day and began to write down everything they remembered, and they created the gospel account of Mark. The next city that took place in was somewhere in Palestine. Today the strongest argument is that it took place in Capernaum, but it was either Capernaum or Nazareth, and they wrote the gospel account of Matthew. The next city it happened in was almost simultaneous, and it happened in the city of Damascus, or Antioch in Syria. And we got the gospel account of Luke, and many, many years later, it happened in the city of Ephesus in Turkey. But remember, many years later, John the Apostle lived so long. He lived a very long time, okay? Why didn't they write it down initially? No one believed that all the people who'd seen Jesus would be dead before he returned in glory.
Send your spirit, spirit come, fall fresh on us. Fill us with your love. Lord, send your spirit, fall fresh on us. Fill us with your